talking at some point. And it looks like we might be streaming live now.
Okay, I think we're on.
Okay, great. Well, I see from the Q&As that people are on, so thank you for messaging there to let us know that this is working. We envisioned this event originally in March as a small-ish event for the Girl Scouts in our congregation and friends and other families in our community. And after a few months of the pandemic, we decided to re-envision it as a virtual event. And we thought we'd get, you know, more people, but we're really pleased to have 450 people registered. So we've re-envisioned the technology. We're now doing it via Zoom webinar. So hopefully it's working for all of you. Thank you for your patience as we navigate this. So I'll just start by introducing myself. So my name's Jennifer, and I am a Girl Scout leader from the nation's Capital Council. This is my daughter, Harper. She's a brownie. And this is Mira. She is a brand new Daisy who doesn't even have a vest yet because she's starting kindergarten this fall. And the panelists that I have with me today are first my husband, Pastor Dave Slagelpeck. He is the pastor at Epiphany Lutheran Church in Burtonsville, Maryland. Epiphany is a congregation of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. And we are very excited to have Bishop Layla Ortiz with us today. She is the Bishop of the DC Metro Synod of the ELCA. So the synods in our church are basically regions that have the groups of congregations. And so our synod covers DC and parts of Virginia and Maryland. And Bishop Layla is very special to us. So we're so glad to have her with us today. So our panelists, as I mentioned, are Girl Scouts from Epiphany. So Girl Scouts, can you give a wave? All right, so we'll be hearing from them later in the interview portion of today's event. Just wanted to remind you that the materials for today are posted on the Epiphany website. So what we're going to be doing mostly today is working through this booklet. You'll need some of these, the worksheets. I printed them in different colors. It doesn't matter if they're different colors, but these will be things that we will do to participate in the activities. If you weren't able to get things printed, you can just follow along. You can make your own notebook. You can grab a piece of paper to take notes, to write, draw pictures, whatever works for you will work for us. In terms of the swap, we have invited you to pick 3 items. So whether those are the pony beads or rocks or anything that you want to use that will help us through our activity, you can gather those now. So I have a safety pin to put the beads on, or you could do a bracelet. So you could have a piece of string. And if you want to do a little picture on paper to put on your safety pin, grab a little piece of paper that you can pin on there towards the end of our workshop. So I think that covers the introductions. For the logistics, so for those of you who are joining us via the Zoom webinar, the question and answer section is open. So on the bottom of your screen, you can ask questions. So we are going to do our best to monitor that throughout the event. That is only visible to the panelists, so just so that you are aware of that. And if you're on Facebook Live, you can try to ask questions via the chat there as well, and we will do our best. If you have questions, as Pastor Dave said at the worship service this morning, if you have questions after this about what we said, or how this relates to in your life, or you just want to chat, Pastor Dave is available. You can always reach us via our Facebook page. And also if you register in advance, you have my email address, so you can contact us that way as well. All right, so let's get started. So let's get started with our booklet. So on the front of your booklet, you can write your name and your Girl Scout level and year. So Harper is a second-year brownie, so she can write second-year brownie, or if you want to write 2020, that's also fine. We'll get started. me for now. All right, and then we'll turn to page 1. So page 1 of our booklet goes over, yep, right here. So page 1 of our booklet goes over the 5 steps to earn the My Promise, My Faith pin. So we're going to go over what those 5 steps are. And today, if you fill out this booklet, you will have covered all 5 steps and earned your pin. And you can either talk to your Girl Scout leader or your parent to try to get the pin for you. They're available on the Girl Scout shop. So, and it depends on the level. So you want to make sure that you get the pin for your level and your year. The 5 steps to earn the pin are 1, choose 1 line from the Girl Scout law. So today we are going to be talking about the part of the Girl Scout law that calls on us to respect myself and others. The second step is to find a woman in your own faith or another faith community to interview. So we'll be interviewing Bishop Layla Ortiz. The third step is to gather 3 inspirational quotes by women that fit with that line of the Girl Scout law. So one of the worksheets has some quotes that we've offered for you to see if you like those, and you can also find other quotes. If you have other quotes in mind, you can use those instead. Step 4 is to make something to remind you of what you've learned. So we're inviting you to make a swap along with us, or there's a page at the end of the booklet where you can draw a picture of what you've learned, and that will satisfy that step. And step 5 is to keep the connection strong, to talk to someone in your family or in your life about what you've learned and about your own faith. So we'll invite you to do that after the workshop. So let's turn to the next page, page 2, and I'll invite you to join together with us by saying the Girl Scout promise and the Girl Scout law. If we can get our Girl Scout sign up. Scouts, all right. All right, and Harper, would you lead us?
On the promise?
Yep, on the promise.
On my honor, I will try to serve God and my country to help people to live by the Girl Scout law.
I will do my best to be honest and fair, friendly and helpful, considerate and caring, courageous and strong, responsible for what I say and do, and to respect myself and others, respect authority, use resources wisely, make the world a better place, and be a sister to every Girl Scout. All right. So page 3 of your booklet, if you turn to that now, so it says step 1, choose 1 line of the Girl Scout law and write it below. So I invite you to write respect myself and others in your booklet.
Writing it for me.
You can write respect myself and others. All right, and when you're done with that, look up for me.
Writing it for me.
Okay. All right. All right, so because I'm a yoga teacher, I would like to start off our reflection on this part of the Girl Scout law by inviting you to do a little meditation with me. So let's sit up straight and tall. And I'm going to show you a hand motion, and we'll do a call and response. So we'll all say something, and then you say it after me, and then we'll take 3 deep breaths. So I invite you to put your hands on your heart and say, I will remember to respect myself.
I will remember to respect myself.
Take a deep breath in, a slow breath out. Put your hands out like you're gonna serve. Say, I will remember to respect others.
I will remember to respect others.
Take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your nose. Bring your hands to heart center. Say, I will remember to respect God.
I will remember to respect God.
Take a deep breath in. Slow breath out. All right. So now if we turn to page 4, so the next part of this first step is to find a story, song, or poem from your faith with the same ideas as the selected part of the Girl Scout Law. So I am going to turn things over to Pastor Dave, who will talk about the connection between Christianity and the part of the Girl Scout Law that calls us to respect myself and others. And while he's talking, I invite you to look at the first 2 pages of the worksheets. So I printed them in blue, but they look like this. And you can pick out the one that you like the best or that resonates with you and cut it out and paste it in your booklet. And if you like these, you can use one of these. If there's something else that you feel connected to that you want to use, you can just write it in or draw a picture. So that's what will be for this step. And I'll turn it over to Pastor Dave to share his thoughts.
All right, thank you. It's great to have everyone here. I know we had a little bit of a start, but I think everyone's finding their way to Zoom and Facebook, so welcome everyone. So what I'm working off of, mine is a little blue, but I'm using these pages here. I'll hold those up. I promise my faith. And where we drew some of these examples from, they came from 3 different pieces, 3 different resources that we use within our Lutheran denomination. One is Luther's Small Catechism. We're going to hold on to that. I'll come back to that in a moment. And of course, a Bible. I've got my trusty Bible here. And then the other thing at the end, you'll find a song, and I'll talk about a little bit about this a little bit. This is our hymn book, which also contains Luther's Small Catechism. This is the Evangelical Lutheran worship book. So this has all our songs, our settings for worship. So this is a great resource, and there's many other pieces. This is just one part of our resources for worship, and where we turn to celebrate our faith and our relationship with God, and learning about our time to respect ourselves and others. So the first thing I want to turn to is at the very top of the page is the Golden Rule, and this is what is taught across many religious traditions. We're borrowing from the Gospel of Matthew, the 7th chapter, to lift up this "do to others whatever you would like them done to you." This is something that is drawn from our Hebrew scriptures, and again professed through our New Testament writings and across all sorts of other religious and more ancient expressions of our relationship with God, and that's lifted up through our into our secular world as well. It's just something, being able to treat others with respect, and treat them how you would like to be treated. It seems very simple, and it seems like we have a hard time doing that overall. So that's one good thing to remember, the Golden Rule. We're going to move down to the 10 Commandments. Here's a set of laws that, if you're familiar with the story from Exodus of Moses up on the mountain talking and speaking with God, and comes down with the tablets, these 10 Commandments were given really as a way of figuring out how we can be in relationship with God and with each other. The one that we pulled out from, this is from the New Living Translation, about honoring your father and mother. This is an important aspect of our relationship together as Girl Scouts and your guardians and family members, to find this time to be bound with one another and to seek relationship through these commandments. And then I said I was coming back to this. I also put in a little sample of Martin Luther. He's our namesake for our tradition that helped lead our European Reformation in the 16th century. And he put together this nice little booklet that helps families to do devotion at home and to learn the faith and at home. And one of the things that he does very nicely is he pulled together the 10 Commandments. He not only gives the 10 Commandments, but he gives a little bit of meaning behind it, so we can see that it's not just a bunch of laws that say, don't do this, you shouldn't do this, and don't think about it. So when we lifted up here today was the fourth commandment of honoring your father and mother. And what does he have to say about this? We are to fear and love God, so that we neither despise nor anger our parents and others in authority, but instead honor, serve, obey, love, and respect them. Starts to expand a bit about what this means. The other one that we put in there for example, and this comes down to being able to respect not only ourselves but others. We shall not bear false witness against our neighbors. Now, what does that mean? We are to fear and love God. He starts off about recognizing this relationship and tension that we have with God of fearing and loving, but that we shall not tell lies about our neighbors, betray or slander them, or destroy their reputations. Instead, we are to come to their defense, speak well of them, and interpret everything they do in the best possible light. This is a powerful witness, and again, as we come to these, work through these, they seem to be really simple, and we have a really hard time living this out. So that's why we lift up and come back to these promises and laws over and over again. Into the next section of loving each other. This kind of expounds off of expands what we talked about with the golden rule. We're not only just talking about treating other people the way we'd want to be treated, but now we're getting into something a little bit deeper here. Loving one another. And how we do that. Jesus here in the New Testament takes those 10 commandments as he was challenged on, we'll pick the best one, pick the greatest one. What's the best one? Trying to trick him. And he takes all of those and wraps it up into this essence of loving one another, loving God and loving our neighbor, loving ourselves. And that takes a lot to reflect on as we try to dig into what it means to just not only respect another person, but respecting ourselves. And that's where it really begins, as we can live that out. We start working even deeper. Do not judge others. I know I do that. I've done that. I still do that, judging people. But we have to reflect back on what this means, that we are to love, right? We are to love and not to just condemn somebody, but to also to forgive. And that takes a lot of work. If we would like to be forgiven, how do we look at another person who might have stumbled and needs forgiveness? This isn't about forgetting or trying to deny something that was terrible that happened, but really seeking through how we can be grounded and built together through this relationship with God. And so that's that first section. And these are just a few examples throughout our scriptures from the our New Testament and from our Hebrew text where we borrow from, and our faith grows out of the Torah and the prophets. So this is this next piece, respect all people. Now in here, this is one of my favorite passages, or at least part of it. It's leading into kind of following this in 1 Corinthians in the 12th chapter, the beginning of the 12th chapter, the sense of respecting all people. The Apostle Paul lays out what it means to be a part of Christ, that we are one body, and that all of the members, down to the ones that you don't even think when you're thinking about your own physical body, all the little members that make up your body, they all have worth. And they help us to be in one, in unity. And as we continue out of that section where he lists all the different parts of the body, we get to this one, 1 Corinthians 12:24 through 27, where he talks about how each of these members, the effects that they have. When one member suffers, all suffer together with it. And think about how that impacts our relationships with one another. Think about what is happening in our world, and that has continued to happen in our world where there is suffering. One person's suffering is not somebody else's suffering. We are drawn into that suffering together. When one member of our body is hurting, we are all hurting. So we need to consider this as we dive into our faith together. And if you are from a faith outside of Christianity, you probably have heard, and I'm guessing many times, these messages aren't something that we hear as like a general rule across the Christian faith. We struggle within our own faith on living these out and recognizing our dependence on one another and the ways in which God binds us together. So respecting all people, we're beginning to see how this goes from just treating other people the way we want to be treated to binding us together with one another as one body. And then we hit the part where I think we really lean in to God, loving your enemies. This is a struggle for me, because when I think of enemies, I think of something that is against me and trying to challenge me and take, hurt me. So I need to brace myself and be defensive. And Jesus is here talking about loving our enemies, and it really opens us up to understanding what that means, because it's more of a natural response to hate an enemy, to reject somebody and push them away, do whatever. That comes more naturally than to turn and love our enemies. And we really can't do that on our own. According to our faith, this is a truly divine interaction that weighs on us. Why should we love our enemies if someone is trying to hurt us? And I keep talking about someone as if this is an outside experience. Our enemies, we can look in the mirror and find the enemy within. And how do we handle that? How do we struggle with the places where we hurt someone else, where we hurt ourselves? And if we can find a way to love, this is where we can break through. And it is through that loving that we come complete. And here in the text, the version that we have at the end of Matthew in the 5th chapter, it says, "But you are to be perfect." And I think really what that is trying to capture is more of to be complete, to be one and whole with God. This is where we can find wholeness, is when we can heal the destructive natures within us. That's what when we speak about the sin of racism that is debilitating to not only ourselves but to our relationship across the board. This is something that has trapped us, and we continue and need to confront those enemies so we can overcome. And by doing that, this is where we can only be redeemed, and where we can be transformed is within that. And finally, we end here with a song that was Jennifer and I. This was part of our wedding, and I've used it in my ordination. It's been a powerful hymn in our lives, but there are so many songs of faith, and just a few that all lead to our response. This is how Lutherans, for such a long, rich history of singing and lifting our voices to God, this is how we praise God. This is how we lament, and this is, our anger can come out through this song and questioning why and where are you, God. We can do all that through song, and there's so many pieces of beautiful poetry in our hymn books. One that I think that you might just wanted to read one quick one here. Where is it? In Lord, whose love in humble service. In the second verse of this this beautiful poetry, the songwriter writes, "Still your children wander homeless. Still the hungry cry for bread. Still the captives long for freedom. Still in grief we mourn our dead. As you, Lord, in deep compassion healed the sick and freed the soul, by your Spirit send your power to our world to make it whole." We're drawn into this, and we just continue to layer and be brought in together. We stumble and fall, but we continue to be lifted up through our faith, and that's what I wanted to bring here and share a little bit about why we put those together. So if you can select those, if you need help figuring out another one, if some of those didn't quite hit with you, you need to find another text from Scripture, or if you have your own faith tradition to draw from that connects with this sense of being drawn together and as one people. You see that through some of the secular works that were rooted in some of these ancient texts as well. So it lives on. But that's all I've got. I will turn it back over to Jennifer.
Thank you. So if you were looking at your sheets during that time, you can glue your text into page 4 of the booklet, or if you want to do that later, that's also fine. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to turn to page 5, and then we're going to set our booklets aside for just a second as we pull out this worksheet. So it's the last page of the worksheet packet that we posted. So you need to get this, and you need to get your 3 items. So your 3 beads, or your 3 rocks, or 3 of anything that you have nearby. And all of the things that are in these boxes are ways that we're offering up that you could respect yourself, you could respect others, or you could respect God by doing any of these things. Some of them fit within multiple categories. Some might fit only with one in your mind. And some you might wonder, how does that fit? And so I invite you to consider how it might fit within the 3 categories, and to talk with people that you're watching with, or talk with your family about how you think that might resonate with you in terms of respecting yourself, respecting others, or respecting God. So as we go through this, so you can put it down in front of you, grab your 3 beads. So Harper and I are going to read what's written here, and you can put, when you find something that you want to remember to respect yourself, you put your first bead on that square. And the second bead will be for something you want to remember to do to respect others. And the third bead will be a way in which you want to remember to respect God. All right, so the first one we're going to read from left to right and top to bottom. So pick up litter and dispose of it properly. Dance to a song I enjoy. Stand up for a friend who is being teased.
Name 3 things I am grateful for. Pursue activities that I am passionate about. Take care of my belongings.
Make a new friend. Tell my parents how I am feeling. Greet someone with a smile.
Donate food or toys to someone in need. Listen when someone is talking to me. Remind myself that I am loved.
Take care of my body, like brushing my teeth. Say a prayer. Take care of my pet or animals.
Take a deep breath and notice how I'm feeling. Exercise my body during doing an activity I like. Read the Bible, sacred text.
Ask a friend how they are and actively listen to their response. Do my chores. Offer to help a neighbor.
Be polite. Say please and thank you. Give someone a complete compliment. Be honest. Don't lie.
Okay, so I'll give you a minute to put your beads on your worksheet here. And then once you've picked out the 3 things, you can take your safety pin or your bracelet and put your beads on your swab. Okay.
Pink is for myself.
Okay.
Then blue, which is for helping someone else, because the earth is blue. And God, since you can't see it, it's that white.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we'll close it up and we'll set it aside for right now. The next thing that I'll have you do, and I don't know if you'll have time to do it right now or you can do it a little bit later, but on page 5 of your booklet is a place for you to write down the things that you picked for ways that you can respect yourself, ways that you can respect others, and ways that you can respect God. And in the others category, I put just a few things that you can think about in addition to others, like particular groups of other people, like your family, teachers, and your community. So you can write in there the things that you want to do, either from the worksheet or come up with something on your own, or you can cut out this worksheet and then just paste in the things that you want to do from the worksheet on page 5. All right, so our next step, so all of that was step 1. We'll move to step 2 now, which is our interview with Bishop Layla Ortiz. So Bishop Ortiz was elected as the Bishop of the DC Metro Synod last summer, 2019, and is serving her first 6-year term as the Bishop of our Synod. He is a passionate and inspiring leader, and we are so pleased to have her with us today. So I will turn it over to her to share a few thoughts and to share anything she has on how she is called to respect herself and others. And then we will open it up for some questions from the Scouts who have joined us today. And I have a couple of questions that have come in via email that we'll share as well. So I'll turn it over to you, Bishop Ortiz.
Hi, everyone. This is really exciting. This is the first time that I've been invited to be a part of something like this. And it's given me a lot of joy to think about, to pray about, to even prepare for this morning, at least here in Maryland. I know it's morning wherever you are. I'm so honored that you would have chosen to be with us today. As Jennifer has shared, I am the Bishop of the Metropolitan Washington, D.C. Synod. Many people confuse it with Senate, S-E-N-A-T-E. It's not a Senate, thanks be to God. It's a Synod, S-Y-N-O-D. And that means that the word Synod means church together, right? And so I get to be bishop of several churches that are one, right? Because we are one Synod. We have 75 congregations in this particular Synod. And as Jennifer has shared, it's between about 60 miles, DC proper, some parts of Virginia, some parts of Maryland. And so every church, as I've shared often and a lot, is that when you visit a Evangelical Lutheran church in America, you have visited a Lutheran church in America. We're not all the same, which is part of the beauty of what it means to be church together. We get to glean from each other, learn from each other, learn what works, and sometimes even learn what doesn't work. So this is part of the gift of being the bishop of the Synod. I get to see the breadth of ways that we can be church. And sometimes we get to teach and walk with each other so that we can do better and so that we can be better Christians and human beings. That's the call, right? And so one of the things that has beyond my relationship with Jesus, who I love, and I say it often because it's true, Jesus for me is not just someone who lives in the Bible or lives in the past. For me, Jesus is someone who lives here and now and among us. And He's someone that I talk to daily. I'm an only child, which if I saw all of you, I would be asking how many of you don't know what it means to be an only child. But that means that I've always had a really big imagination. And because I was always home alone with my parents, I chose to make Jesus my friend. And so Jesus has always been my friend since I was a very, very little girl. And every time I played, Jesus was in the room. And as I've grown up in my faith, Jesus has always been in the room. And not in my imagination, but in my heart, in my mind, and in the ways that I live in the world. I'm mindful of what Jesus teaches us and how we are called to live and respect one another. And so one of the gifts that we have is that we don't just have Jesus to be an example, but we have others who have followed Jesus in ways that have been life altering, right? Have been new and different and exciting, ways that Jesus himself invited us to do. And one of those people that has been a really big influence and kind of helped me reimagine how I engage other human beings happens to be a theologian, which means that he was someone who studied religion, studied God in society. So he was a theologian. He was a pastor, which meant that he led a group of people in their spirituality and in their walk of faith. And he was also a mystic. And a mystic is someone who is able not only to be in the present, but to understand parts of the transcendent, like the spiritual world, that many people just don't even think about because they're just so full of activity. They have so much to do that they don't sit and experience the transcendent, right? Big word, look it up. It's a good word. We can use it all the time. But his name was Howard Thurman, and Howard Thurman was a mentor to Martin Luther King Jr. I'm guessing that most of everyone watching knows who Martin Luther King Jr. was. Not very many people know who Howard Thurman is. He was also an activist, but more than that, he was a conversation partner for Martin Luther King Jr. And one of the things that he shared with his students and anyone who would listen was that when we engage another human being, any and every other human being, we are engaging an expression of God. There's a piece of God. There's something about God that is in that human being that has never been before, right? Before they were born, and will never be again after they die, right? There's one moment, this one glimpse of who God is in every single person that is alive today. So if you're not alone and you have someone next to you, look at that person. Go ahead, look at that person, right? And recognize and notice there is something in that human being that's right next to me that is an expression of God, the God of the universe, the God of all that has ever been is in the human being that is sitting right next to you. And that thing that is the expression of God never existed before that person was born and will never be again after they're no longer with us. So that, when I learned that, it just blew my mind. I was, wow, right? Not only is that true for the people that are sitting next to us, but it's true of us too, right? It's true of us. That when we look at ourselves, when we look at ourselves in the mirror, when we look at our hearts, our minds, our spirits, there's something about us. There's an element of the divine, of the God of the universe that is in us. So that helps me respect myself and see myself in a very different way. And that helps me respect others and see others in a very different way. And so this is why we're so different. This is why we have different colors, right? This is why we have different hair, we have different eyes, because God is so grand and so big that not one person can hold the whole image of God, right? So here we have millions and millions of people that have shown up in the world in ways that reveal the beauty, the mystery, the excitement of who God is. And so I'm always encouraged to respect others and to recognize the God, right? The God of the universe that chose to live among us. Even as what Pastor Dave was sharing, there's sometimes that we don't like people, right? There's some things that we don't like about people, right? And yet the call for us is to recognize that whether we like them or not, God loves them, right? Because God created them. They are human beings that are worthy of love, that are worthy of healing, of liberation, transformation, of all that is good, because Jesus came so that we might have life, and not just life, but have it abundantly. So that's a little bit about me and why I respect other human beings, and I respect myself, because I don't only look at how people behave, I look at who people are and who God created all of us to be, right? And those glimpses of God that are in each and every one of us. So thank you for having me today.
Great, thank you. So we will move into our question and answer portion of the interview here. So if you have your page 6 of your booklet, feel free to write down some of the questions that are being asked and the answers or questions that you have. Maybe Bishop Layla Ortiz will get to it, but use this as your time, as your place to write a few notes of this interview time. So we'll turn it over first. So our first question comes from Robin. She's a junior from Troop 31006, and she's one of our panelists. So Robin.
What does it mean to be a bishop?
Good question. To be a bishop in right, in the Lutheran Church, means that I get to not only be a pastor of a congregation, I get to be the pastor of the whole synod, of all the churches, right? So if something happens and the congregation needs help and needs some kind of advice or a resource or a tool so that they can move from one place to another, I get to do that and walk with them. So for instance, if Pastor Dave ever needs help personally, spiritually, professionally, we're here to be with him and walk with him. If the congregation needs help, they call me too, and I'm able to kind of get them from maybe whether it's crisis, whether it's mourning or grieving or something has happened in the community, anything, it could be anything, I can be with them and walk alongside with them. So I not only get to work with congregations, I get to work with other denominations, other leaders. I get to preach, I get to teach, I get to be in fellowship. I get to do things really awesome like this. There's so many things. And so when I first was elected, I had an idea of what it would be to be a bishop. That idea, not very true, right? There's a different reality once you become bishop. There are new responsibilities and new ways of being, but all of them, for the most part, have been really exciting and surprising. So basically, I just get to be a pastor, but for more people.
Yeah. Sounds good. So our next question is from Sasha. She is a brownie from Troop 34055.
Did you have to learn stuff before you got elected, to be a bishop? A school where you learn how to be a bishop?
Yeah. So, for instance, Pastor Dave and I have the same kind of education. We went to a seminary, which is a school for training pastors and training leaders for the church. And for us, that was a 4-year school. And in that 4 years, we had internships, which means that we did training in different congregations, and we had trainings in hospitals so that we could be chaplains and walk with people who are in crisis or are having health issues. But when it comes but that was for being a pastor. And then when I became a bishop, or when I was elected to be bishop, the headquarters of the denomination, for instance, in Chicago, for us, the headquarters are in Chicago, and we have a bishop that is bishop over the whole denomination. I am not a bishop for the whole denomination. I'm just a bishop for a region. her offices, we also have a woman presiding bishop. Her office gave us some training. And a lot of that training was more legal, which actually Jennifer can help us with, as she's a lawyer. But it was a lot more training about what to do and what not to do, so that we would stay safe. Not only we would stay safe, but we would know how to keep our congregation safe and our pastors safe. But it was a whole lot of learning about process and constitutions and policies. It was a lot of reading and a lot of learning, mainly what not to do, right? So that we wouldn't hurt people and hurt the communities that we've been entrusted to serve. So that's a very good question. Yes, there was some training. Thank you, Sasha.
So we have a question that was posted in the Q&A from Letitia, and the question is, Bishop Layla, did you grow up in a Lutheran church?
Good question. Could they tell that I wasn't? I was not. I was not raised in the Lutheran church. I was raised in the Pentecostal church, mainly in the Bronx and then in Puerto Rico. I am Puerto Rican, was born in Puerto Rico, but then was moved to New York, to the Bronx when I was 2 years old, and then moved back when I was 13. So I grew back and forth, but I grew up in the Pentecostal church. Was a significantly more conservative. My mother would call it the can't do church, right? There was a whole lot of things we couldn't do, which included dancing, which I love to do. I couldn't dance. I couldn't wear pants. I couldn't wear earrings or necklaces, or so a whole lot of things I couldn't do. But one thing that did happen in that space was that I learned about Jesus. I learned who Jesus was. I learned about the Holy Spirit. I learned to grow in my spirituality, and I learned how to pray in that space. And so there are things that I don't necessarily like about what I learned when I was a little girl and into my young adulthood. But there are some things that I really, really value. And those are the things that I bring into my leadership now. So good question. Thank you.
Right, so our next question, we have two questions from Ava and Maddie. So Ava's a brownie from Troop 34055, and Maddie is a junior from Troop 2427, and their questions are similar. So I'll have them ask their questions, and then you can respond.
Yeah. When did you know you wanted to be a pastor?
Wow. So when I was a little girl, like I said, I always had a relationship with Jesus in the church. What I didn't say was that because I was raised in the Pentecostal church, I went to church 6 days a week. Mondays were my day off. Mondays were the only day that I didn't go to church. We had prayer services, and we had youth group, and we had Bible study, and we had worship. I mean, we were always at the church. And so for me, it wasn't such a huge leap to think of myself as being a leader in the church, although being a pastor was a new thing. Like, I always knew that I was going to be a leader in the church, but it wasn't until I moved back to New York when I was 21 from Puerto Rico, moved back to New York, that I was introduced to the Lutheran church, and then my life kind of changed, and the church kind of opened up the possibility and said, have you even thought about becoming a pastor of the church? And because the question was asked, that was the moment that I thought, well, why not? Right? That's my story. That's not everybody's story. There's a lot of struggle. There's some people who really struggle with the idea of being a pastor, but because of my upbringing and my relationship with God and the church, it wasn't such a huge leap. I just needed someone to ask the question, right? And so I'm thankful for those people. So I was 22 years old when I began my journey in thinking about becoming a pastor in the church. Thanks for the question.
So what is the big difference between being a pastor and being a bishop?
So the biggest difference for me, and this may not be true for other bishops, in our denomination here in the United States, there are 65 bishops. So just here, and this just for me, so I don't want to speak for other bishops, just for me, the biggest difference is that I don't get to be in one worshiping community every Sunday, right? Most pastors pastors in general get to be with one community every week, year after year. You get to know the people, you get to know them by name, you get to preach and teach and grow with a community. I don't get to do that anymore. I go to all the different churches and I engage all the leaders and all the people, but I don't get to have a rooted relationship with any of them because I don't get to be with them all the time. So that's one of the things that for me is on the negative side, it's like, oh, I really wish I had that community to be with every single week. But on the positive side, I get to see a whole lot. I get to walk with a whole lot more people, and I get to learn a lot more about who God is and who people are and how we function as communities so that I can be of a resource to other communities. I can say, oh, I saw in this congregation this wonderful thing that's working. So why don't we attempt something like that in this space, right? So I get to be a better teacher than when I was serving just one congregation, because I've learned so much more that now I can share a lot more with the people that I serve. So thank you.
Our next question is going to come from Clara. She's a cadet who's also a Girl Scout Juliet, and her question was also submitted by Quinn, who is 9 years old and is from the Colonial Coast Council. So I'll turn over to Clara.
Hi. So my question is, what is your favorite part about your job? There seems to be a lot going on.
There is a lot. There is a lot. Actually, my favorite part of the job are the interesting invitations, like these moments, just to be able to share story and share possibilities. That means a lot to me. That's a really, that's an honor for me. It's a huge privilege that I get to share and that a lot of people will actually listen to what I have to say. That's a huge responsibility, and it's a huge honor. So that's one of the things that I value, mainly because at heart, I'm a pastor, but I'm also a teacher. I love to teach, and I love to teach in ways that people get it. I don't like to teach super high so that people are like, what is she saying? I'd rather teach in a way that you can implement whatever you learn from me immediately, if at all possible. So my favorite part is teaching and sharing. Yeah.
All right, our next question is from Sophie, who is also a cadet.
Hi, Bishop. You are very inspiring to us. Who are the women in your life or who you have studied that are inspiring you?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm flattered. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. Wow. Women are pretty amazing, right? The women in my life, my mother and my aunts, right? There's family members that have influenced a lot of how I live and how I think in the world, right? So, of course, right? My mom, my aunt, who has been a part of my life all of my life, and my cousin, my aunt's daughter, who also literally lived in the same apartment, same building, same house. We just grew up together. It's my family. And also my friends. I'm very intentional about the people that I hang out with. I think if one of the things that you hear today, listen to this. I surround myself with women and people who inspire me and push me and challenge me to think, challenge me to be better, challenge me to process things differently. And so I have some friends, one of which is an author. Her name is Rosella Ide White, who, beyond being one of my closest and dearest friends, sometimes makes my days impossible because she asks so many hard questions and she presses me to do better and think differently, right? And I appreciate that. I value that. I'm inspired by that. There are some authors too that I don't know personally, but have influenced the way I think. So reading and listening intently is important. So some of those authors are Barbara Brown Taylor, Yvonne Guevara from Brazil, theologian, even Brene Brown, some contemporary social workers. I like to draw from different places, and I really value women, how we think, how we process things is very different and is a gift. And I really value those who have nurtured those gifts in ways that inspire change and inspire movement from one way of being to a new and transformative way of being. So yeah, I have lists and lists of women that I read and listen to, and people in my life that I'm very selective about engaging and having in my life, because I need and want to be challenged, because I want to grow and I want to be better every single day. So thank you for the question and the compliment.
So our next question was submitted in advance from Jordan. She's a cadet in Troop 23 from the Sierra Nevada Council. And her question is, have you ever doubted that there is a God?
Yeah, that's a really hard question for me, because I want to be honest, but I feel, and I've often felt like my honest response would invite some skepticism. But the truth is, because of my upbringing and because I've only ever known Jesus and God as friend and as someone who loves me, I've not doubted God's existence ever. I've always been pretty consistent about recognizing how fragile we are as human beings. And one of the things that helped confirm that is when I went to seminary and read and learned some more, this question of, if God exists, then why does God let XYZ happen? Like, why do we have racism, or why do we have pain, or why do we have health issues, or why did God allow for XYZ, right? I hear those questions all the time, and my first instinct, and I say this humbly and sincerely, my first instinct is not to point to God when I witness these kinds of things. My first instinct is to point back to us and our sin and how we have used our ability to affect the world in ways that have been harmful, in ways that aren't healthy and aren't good, right? So I've not doubted that God exists. I've instead realized that when life happens in ways that are really, really hard and unfair and just potentially depressing, I know that God is there. It's not that God allowed it, it's that God is also experiencing the pain of what is happening in the world with us. And somehow, some way, by God's grace, God takes this awful reality and turns it into an opportunity for growth, for liberation, for transformation, and for newness. So for me, in my mind, even as I was growing up, it wasn't a matter of God allowing bad to happen. It was more a matter of bad is happening, and God is also disappointed, and God is also hurting, and God is also watching us and saying, why are you behaving this way? And let me help you in this particular pain and in this particular difficulty to learn, grow, and be better. So it's a very good question. And I promise you that won't be the answer that everyone gives you. There are people that have endured a lot of doubt, and there's no judgment. I think that's a fair reaction. It makes perfect sense. But because of my experience and my lived experience, it just hasn't been a notion for me. I've only recognized that when life happens in terrible ways, God is also grieving with us and helps us survive it and thrive through it. So thank you.
So I have 4 more questions for you that I think are perhaps be a little bit shorter. We'll see. A couple that I just want to get to that were submitted. The next one is from Facebook Live. Somebody asked, how do you respect a bully who is mean to you?
So I'm going to take this answer from an 8-year-old girl that I saw this week. She said, I saw her in the video. She said, my mother taught me that hurt people hurt people. So when I see someone hurting someone else, my question about that person is, what happened? Who hurt you? Right? Wise little girl, very wise little girl. What happened? And so for me, when I've had bullies. Bullies have attacked me, and it's been very painful and very hurtful. After I get over the shock and the pain, right? Because that's real, of what it means to be bullied in ways that are unjust. Any bully is unjust. I turn my judgment and my anger into curiosity, and I wonder what they're going through and what pain they're experiencing that validates or justifies their behavior towards me. And sometimes I even get the opportunity to ask and say, what is this really about? Why are you choosing to hurt me? What is hurting you? But I get to do that as an adult, right? As an adult, it's a different experience. As a child, that's hard. That's hard. Those of you who are watching and have been bullied, it's really hard. But to hurt them back doesn't help the situation. Revenge or vengeance doesn't help anything. It just adds to their own hurt, right? So absolutely tell someone that they're hurting you. Tell someone, either a parent, a teacher, whoever you respect and know that can intervene. But don't assume that the person is mean. Maybe think and be curious about what has led them to believe that that is the only way to behave in public spaces or with anyone else, right? But that's, of all the questions you've asked, that's the hardest one, right? Because there's so much pain in the world, and children even are hurting, right? And so they lash out in ways that are unhelpful and painful. So I'm sorry for those of you, if not all of us, who have experienced bullying. It's hard. Yeah.
All right, the next question is a little bit easier. Someone is wondering if you can serve more than one 6-year term as bishop.
I can, but I get to choose if I want to go for another term. And the assembly of people that are gathered to vote get to choose whether they want me to serve another term. But yes, it's a possibility.
All right, so for our second to last question, I'm going to turn it over to Bella. She is a brownie from troop 31040.
What do you like to do for fun?
What do I like to do I like to hang out with friends, which has been really difficult these days since the pandemic, right? But I like, I'm kind of weird, but I like documentaries, and I like TED Talks. I don't know if anyone knows what those are, but they're like 15-minute speeches that are really, really smart and really great, insightful things. But I love good food. So sometimes I like to cook, not always, but sometimes I enjoy cooking. And you know what I also really enjoy that I miss doing? I like bowling. I liked bowling. I like those kinds of sports and fun things. And I like drawing. I like drawing, which I've started to do a little bit more of lately. So yeah, thank you.
All right, so our last question is from Harper. She's a brownie from troop 34055.
Were you a Girl Scout?
I was not a Girl Scout, and now I'm kind of grieving that, because these are some pretty awesome experiences, and you're growing up to be phenomenal young women. So, but no, I did not have this experience. I did not.
One more question, Harper?
I have 2 more.
Okay.
What type of Girl Scout cookie do you like?
What type of cookie do you like? She was kind of soft, so in case you didn't hear that.
I heard it. I have 2 favorites. I like the Thin Mints and Samoas. Those are my favorite. Yep.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Is that your favorite too, Thin Mints? All right. Well, thank you, Bishop Ortiz. We really appreciate your time and all of the wise words that you were able to share with us today. Girl Scouts, I know that we got started a few minutes late and we're running a little bit over the hour. We just have a couple more minutes of things that we would like to do to close out the booklet. So if you can hang with us, that would be great. And if not, you can catch the video on Facebook Live later. But let's turn now to page 7 of your booklet. So pages 7, 8, and 9 are where you can put 3 quotes. So that's part of the steps for to earn the pin, is to find 3 quotes, inspirational quotes by women that fit with the selected part of the Girl Scout law. So on our worksheets, we gave you a page that has some quotes by women. And so you can look at these and decide if you like any of these. And if so, cut them out and put them in. And if there are other quotes that you know about, or if you want to do your own research to find new quotes, you are welcome to do that as well, and just put them in your booklet. So I will just share one that is on the page that I put in my booklet, and then we'll move on, and I'll let you finish up the quotes after the fact. So the quote that I wanted to share was from Malala Yousafzai, and she said, "We should all consider each other as human beings, and we should respect each other." All right, so step 4 is on page 10 of your booklet. So on page 10, you can draw a picture of anything that you learned today. Can you just hold on for just a minute until I'm done talking? You can draw a picture of what you've learned today, or something that will remind you, or you can finish up your swap. So on your swap, you can take a little piece of paper and draw something that will remind you of what you learned today. Or if you picked up a packet in advance, you can use this little keychain tag that I included. So draw a picture on the circle sticker, and then you can put it onto your keychain and then attach it to your swap. And you can put your swap anywhere that you keep your swaps, or put it somewhere that it will remind you of what we've talked about today, and the 3 ways in which you will remember to respect yourself, respect others, and respect God. So that is the step 4 in your booklet. Step 5 is an invitation for you to keep the conversation going, to talk with those who you watch this with, or to talk with your family or your friends about what you learned and what you believe. So just write down the date that you talked to somebody and who you talked to on page 11. And then the final step is to fill out your certificate that you completed all of the steps needed to earn the My Promise, My Faith pin. You can talk to your Girl Scout leader or your parent in order to get the actual pin to put on your vest. And then we will also be sending out fun patches to, we're going to send them out to at least the first 250 people who respond to the survey. Dave, do we have the survey posted in the chat?
I just posted it in the Q&A. It's under an answer. That's how I was able to get it. Gwendolyn Davis said to leave, but I posted it in her response.
Okay, so you can see the survey there, and we will leave that open for a little bit so that you can copy that. And it will also be posted in the Facebook Live link. And so if you need to go back to Facebook and just scroll through the comments to find it there, it will be there as well. So in the survey, we're just curious what your thoughts were. If you have any kind suggestions for us, we're open to those as well. And then we're asking people to put in their address so that we can just create an easy mailing label for you to send your fun patch. And this is what the fun patch is. This is what it looks like that we're going to send you. All right, so I would like to thank again all of our panelists. Oh yeah, we have some people who have their fun patch already. So thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate all the panelists here. Pastor Dave, Bishop Layla, thank you. And thank you for everyone who joined us on the webinar and who joined us on Facebook Live. I would just like to close with a prayer. So I invite you to close your eyes or fold your hands, whatever makes you comfortable in a prayerful position. Dear God, we thank you for this time we have had together to learn about our own faith tradition or a new faith tradition. Keep all of the Girl Scouts who joined us today and their families healthy and strong so that they can live out the Girl Scout promise and Girl Scout law, making the world a better place in their own unique way. Amen. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Bella, you need to try and be a little bit more.
Bye.
Awesome.
Bye. I have one question.
Sasha, you want to hold on for just a minute and then you can ask your question. We'll let Pastor Dave take us off Facebook.